Good.
Okay, cool.
We are composing ourselves, so composing that we are an orchestra of movie fiends here tonight to talk about this little indie, small Marvel film that suddenly just appeared on screen this past weekend. Didn't even know it was coming out. Okay, well, maybe I did. But still, you wouldn't have guessed it the way Marvel promoted this. And we're talking about Ant-Man, and I've got a full crew here with me tonight to talk about this very interesting latest installment into the MCU, as people like to call it, or as I like to call it, cha-ching. Now, first off, we have here tonight, we have Mr. Cole Meredith. Hello, sir.
Hey, Mark. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, man.
You're welcome. And right next to Cole, we have the one and only diva of the spoiler room herself. Dawn is here with us tonight. Hello, Dawn.
Hello. Always a pleasure.
Fantastic. Did you bring your lasso of truth with you today?
Of course.
Awesome. Maybe you can time it up.
Wait, this is a crossover?
One can only wish.
Marvel and DC, are we going to have to get Patton Oswalt in here to go on a rant or something?
Yes. And speaking of rants, one spoiler room would not be complete without the BFD himself, Mr. Glenn Bittner. Hello, sir.
Hello, how are you?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Sorry, I had a lot of caffeine.
Yeah, I was going to say the one time we give him adrenaline.
All right, who let Glenn have caffeine? All right. And the man with the power bow tie, Mr. Paul Salzar, is in the house. Hello, Paul.
Hello. How are you?
He unlike the Flash, Paul's superpower is he moves really, really, really slow. We're still trying to find the practical use of that superpower. I'm sure we will one day. And then we have here Mr. Scotty D himself from Movieocrity Universe. Hello, Scott.
Hello, yeah, that's my own MCU.
That is your own MCU. That fit very well. And when we have this group of superpowers, these fantastic film fiends would not be complete without a little tiger power in the room tonight. Mr. Tony Estrada. Hello, sir.
How y'all doing? Let's review the smallest movie of all time, Ant-Man.
I don't want to know what you're slapping there. We can't see any video, but, you know, you said small, you slapped something. We're good there, Tony.
You might have squashed Ant-Man right there.
Yeah, that means we won't see Paul Rudd next year now.
You just stepped on Paul Rudd. Way to go. Speaking of Paul Rudd, he plays the title character Ant-Man in a film about a man armed with a super suit with astonishing ability to shrink in scale but increase in strength. Scott Lang, a.k.a. Paul Rudd, must embrace his inner hero and help his mentor, Dr. Hank Pym, and plan to pull off a heist that will save the world. Yes, we have Michael Douglas in here, as well as Evangeline Lilly, and there's Corey Stoll playing a typical Marvel enemy, but we'll get to that in a minute. First, though, let's talk about how they opened this film. Instead of getting initial impressions right away, we're going to mix it up a little bit, and let's just talk about this flashback scene that we get at the beginning of the film. Cole, what did you think of that and how they made Michael Douglas look?
Man, I didn't have any problems with it. I enjoyed it. Yeah, I liked the opening quite a bit, actually. Yeah, definitely. I'm sorry. I like this film a lot, so for the first time in the history of the spoiler room, I may have nothing to say
other than you really liked it.
Yeah, I did. I liked the opening. I thought it was great, and I like how they follow up the opening right away with more Michael Douglas. And, they really do, and they build up Michael Douglas almost as the main character, even though he's not, but they open up a lot of room for, I don't want to say prequel activity, but just good backstory. It's not just passing the torch type of story or a Daniel-san and Miyagi thing. I think Michael Douglas has some really good scenes in this, and I know he's never stopped working, but on the other hand, I've watched everything he's done, and this really is a great role for him. I mean, it's certainly better than Last Vegas. It really is. I mean, I liked Last Vegas, but I thought, well, he looked maybe like he was having some fun here. So yeah, I liked all that stuff.
He did. He did, and it gave us a little bit more of a feeling of just how long S.H.I.E.L.D. actually had been around. Glenn, you're one of the Spoiler Room comic book aficionados, if you will. Did you like how they opened this with kind of that flashback to give you a taste of what S.H.I.E.L.D. was, or was starting to?
Yeah, I mean, I liked it. I mean, I also watch, Agent, Peggy Carter.
Mm-hmm.
And you get a sense of that as well from back then. I mean, it plays into figure back then too. You had all the Cold War paranoia stuff going on, so there was it makes sense that S.H.I.E.L.D. was more that way than it is later on, just because of the era. So
right,
and for all the youngsters out there who didn't grow up, in the aftermath of that, like many of us did in the 70s and 80s, and who apparently also never taught history in school, it gives them a little background on the fact that when your grandma or grandpa talks about the good old days, they weren't really all that good. There are no good old days. Every day had a cloudy forecast to it. So
yeah, had a little extra feeling of paranoia with it too. That's for sure back then, especially around the 80s. Don, what about you? How they opened this film? Did you think you gave it a good feel of what you were in for with the movie, and also giving you the backstory?
Yeah, I do. I liked that they brought John Slattery back as an elder Howard Stark, and I like that they had Haley Atwell as well for Peggy Carter. It did set things up well as far as setting up the tension between Pym and S.H.I.E.L.D. and kind of putting that mystique out there, not saying and setting it up that Pym was the original Ant-Man and we were moving on to the next generation. I liked that because that way they didn't mess with that whole original comic book storyline and moved into the next generation.
Mm-hmm.
I did like that quite a bit.
Yeah, and I will say the work they did on Michael Douglas, I mean, we talked about Terminator Genesis podcast of how they made Arnold look, or how they, CGI'd his face, but Michael Douglas, oh my lord, I'm like, what, did they go in a time machine and just pull young Michael Douglas?
He really did look good, yeah.
Oh my lord, I mean, I know it was probably a combination of CGI and makeup, but Paul, did it surprise you with how Michael Douglas looked in that flashback scene?
It did, and I actually liked it a lot better than what they did with the Tron with Bridges.
With Bridges.
Yeah.
Well, that's a couple of years past now. I mean, technology moves exponentially, I guess you could say. So
exactly, and that's good proof that they could do stuff like that. And it's kind of scary, though, to think that maybe some of the actors will come back, in all sorts of roles that you never would have thought them in.
It does It does kind of open that window, but then you also fall into the whole virtual actor thing, which they're getting closer to, which people are concerned about. Seeing a deceased actor in a role they may not have normally picked, so that could disturb you. Tony, what about you, sir? How they opened this with that flashback and making the young Michael Douglas and that kind of whole scene where they were tying it in sort of to the past, yet bringing hints to the future.
Yeah, I thought the opening scene was really cool, and I liked how we got to see, a little bit of how Peggy Carter and Howard Stark have been doing, because these are two characters we've been following since Captain America: The First Avenger, and obviously with Agent Carter, we've been following the characters more. Obviously, they're older in the opening scene, but that was really cool to me, how we got to see a little bit of them, and in terms of how Michael Douglas looked in the beginning, all younger, holy crap. Yes. I'm at. Yeah, I'm kind of speechless because that's how good the CGI looked on him. But like, wow, he looked like the Michael Douglas from the original Wall Street movie,
Mhm.
and
Which
yeah,
makes me
can you
wonder.
tell speechless?
Which makes me wonder if they borrowed images from Wall Street to help do the CGI, because that had to be enhanced some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, it's true, and it's pretty much what, like you said. I'm just kind of sitting there going, "Are you sure you didn't travel back in time and just brought him here into the future, then brought him back to his past, so it wouldn't ruin the ruin the timeline?" But yeah, all I have to say is that it was definitely really impressive. Like, wow.
How about you, Scott? That opening section, did that surprise you?
Yeah, I didn't have too much problems with it, other than that, they didn't. Once again, they didn't put any opening credits on the damn movie.
You realize opening credits is a thing of the past and a rarity now
No,
on
it
any
peeves-
film.
No, it peeves. I know, but it peeves me. It really does. I'm like, at least throw up a title. A title is fine. I mean, but I feel like otherwise it feels like I've just been like thrown into the middle of something, and it takes me a moment to, get my bearings. Just throw up a fucking title. How hard is that?
Yeah, I don't think they.
I'm always the
I don't
one
even
who
think they showed
curses.
town in the beginning.
Yeah,
They didn't.
But
I'm
Scott,
always-
not everyone's as senile as you are, and they know
I
what
know.
movie.
Hold on a second. Hold on, my spiders are attacking me now.
If you're that worried, just look at the ticket stub that's in your pocket.
Oh, wow! Just check out the marquee. This is the Sting.
Well, it wouldn't be surprising considering the marketing they put behind this
Well,
film,
here's the
which
thing.
was the lack of marketing behind it.
But I have the thing. But I want to say also about the makeup. Yeah, it was so good that I honestly did not register until much later. I'm like, oh yeah, they really must have de-aged him. I was just so used to seeing, like, yeah, that was like the old Michael Douglas. Look at that. And also, I'm sure that they did this mostly with makeup, but Martin Donovan, who was in the opening scene, and then he becomes, the show's called Spoiler Room, people, becomes kind of an antagonist later.
He is playing Agent Carson, though, so that's...
I believe that he is either I probably did it mostly with makeup and stuff, but I think that they slightly de-aged him for the beginning, and of course they aged him a little more for later on in the film because it was to take place like what is it, like 26 years afterwards. So I was also really impressed by that. I was trying to figure out, like, okay, how much did they de-age and then age, and what was the combo? I really spent a lot of time kind of trying to figure that out, honestly. So, yeah, but I mean, like, but I like the opening and stuff. I thought that was fine.
They did the same aging the effect with the Triskelion too. I mean, they made it nice and shiny and new, and it was kind of cool. Because by the time you watched it in Winter Soldier, it was kind of old looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Well, they were still building it in '89, apparently.
Yes, that's what's cool about it. Come on, guys.
That is what's cool. They caught me at first. I'm like, where are we? I'm like, oh, okay, that's where.
There's
that's where we're
actually
at,
a
so.
universe building here. You know, it's a movie universe that's all connected.
Yeah, well.
It isn't because of the cutscenes that are at the end of the movies.
Well, yeah, I know, but we'll get to the interconnectivity in a minute. First off, though, I want to talk about Paul Rudd. Everybody was worried about Paul Rudd playing Scott Lang, and I want to get Don's first impressions here. With Paul Rudd, first how he played Scott Lang, and also how he played off Michael Douglas. How did you think Paul did in this film?
I like Paul Rudd. It was actually a nice change to see him break away from that Will Ferrell type humor, that kind of lowbrow humor, and not that I'm saying Ant-Man is intellectual or anything like that, but it's definitely more.
It's a different type of humor.
It's a different type of humor, and I think he adapted extremely well. Compared to what he had been doing, kind of breaking away from that romantic comedy or just toilet humor.
Yeah.
Not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm not saying that. But I thought he did a really good job. I thought he carried the part well. The only part that I really had trouble swallowing was the chemistry between him and Evangeline Lilly.
Oh, yeah.
That just
Yeah.
left me cold.
Yeah, like
Well, I think that's because of the way Evangeline Lilly played her character.
Yeah, but she was awesome.
Oh no, I mean,
I thought it was.
no,
I thought
don't
it was how it was written.
don't get me wrong. I loved how she played the character. I agree with you though. It's the way it was written. I almost kind of wish they hadn't put such near the end such a blatant like, hey, we got, just leave it a little bit of more mystery at the end between those characters because her character played such a strong character.
Yes,
To
exactly.
have her at the very, very end get just a little bit flushed and flustered with Mr. Scott Lang after he did save the world, but still, it did. It was a little bit out of place. I think it was, and felt a little bit forced. I will say that, yeah. But yeah, what about you, Tony? Paul Rudd. I know there was some concern with Paul Rudd when they cast him, but how do you think he did?
I'm probably one of those people that actually wasn't concerned when I heard about it, because when they announced him being Ant-Man, I'm all like, you know what? I could see Paul Rudd being Ant-Man. And then when I saw the first trailer for Ant-Man that released, I think, of January of this year, that's when I'm all like, wow, he looks like he's going to nail this role. And then now that I've seen the movie, I can actually say he fucking nailed this role. I loved him as Ant-Man.
Mm-hmm.
He had the comic relief of the character. He had the charm to the character. And, what Don said, he kind of took a break from the lowbrow humor you would see him do in the Will Ferrell comedies. So it's a nice way for him to take a break and try something a little bit new because, as far as I know, I don't think he's ever done a movie that had special effects in it. You guys could correct me if I'm wrong. But, yeah, he played the character well. He was very funny. You could tell he was just having a lot of fun. And, yeah, I actually bought him as Ant-Man. So well done, good sir.
And Glenn, what about you, Paul Rudd?
I had no concerns with Rudd playing Ant-Man because I've seen Rudd do some serious stuff before, and I think he's a great actor. I think he's just typecast because he tends to do the same type of character in so many things, and I think that the humor he brought to the character was needed because Ant-Man is kind of silly to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
Just the whole concept of it takes me back to there was an old SNL skit where a bunch of superheroes are meeting at Lois and Superman's apartment, and they're sitting there, and Garrett Morris is playing Ant-Man, and there's the Flash and Superman talking. It's like, well, who are you? He goes, I'm Ant-Man. I can get really small the size of an ant, but keep my human strength. And Flash is like, hey, check this out, strength of a human, and it's.
Yeah.
It is kind of a silly character, and I think you needed to have some level of humor to really pull this one off, because you can't do a dark Ant-Man.
No.
DC
We can't go all Batman v Superman on it.
Legend of the Dark Ant.
Yeah. I can just imagine that, yeah. My name is Scott Lang. My world is fire. Ants. It's just not the same.
All right, DC, are you listening? This is no gritty Plastic Man movie, okay?
Oh, I want a gritty Plastic Man movie so bad. Now that you said that, I totally want that. Do it total noir style. Him in a trench coat and hat, walking down a smoky street, and some crook comes up to him and he just extends his stretchy hand out and whips him. Yeah, that'd be cool. Anyway, sorry.
Someone should make a drawing and send it to DC.
There you go. Cole, what
have I done?
What about you and Paul Rudd?
I like Paul Rudd a lot, and I think he did a great job. I feel weird mentioning this, but I think it should be mentioned just out of respect for the man. That I remember seeing Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers in the theater.
Oh.
Twice, just to try to understand how somebody could not only make but release something. So I'm not trying to be humorous. I know there
Sure,
are
I
people
know.
out there who saying, "Oh, Cole is no." There's no fucking joke. That
Yeah.
movie, it's like so bad that it transcends bad. And Paul Rudd is good in it.
Mhm.
And I would imagine, and this is just hypothesizing on my own inexperienced part, but I've made 5 movies, the 5th, which is about to come out, but 3 of them were really fucking hard. I would go ahead and call them like troubled production. And the Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers was nothing like I've ever been through, that production. So
Sure.
I imagine he came out of that, either you retire or you just do anything and everything, you know, because that was a project that, you know, at one point it just became a soup where the producers were just putting into it anything they could, and he had to maintain a straight face. And he still continued to do movies, and actually really good movies.
Sure.
And really, really good performances. I didn't know that much about his work. I'm now dating a girl who is in love with him. I'm in love with him. So I watched probably every Paul Rudd movie ever made, and he really is a comedic kind of genius. And he has more outtakes than any actor. I mean, people who adore outtakes, just Google Paul Rudd on YouTube and
Sure.
take about 9 hours out of your day. You'll have a good time. But Paul Rudd as Ant-Man was a perfect fit. Some of the jokes were telegraphed, obviously. There was a lot of Marvel influence in here, and especially the Avengers subplot.
Oh, well, yeah, we'll get to that in a minute.
Okay, all right, yeah. Okay, I'll stop then. But I liked it. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'm making conversation just because I don't have anything to say other than 5 stars. I love this movie.
You like the movie and you like Rudd, so
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. Scott, what about you? Paul Rudd, and how'd you feel about him? And also, how about that relationship that they tried to put with him and
Oh, okay. Well, first of all, Cole, don't worry. You have more to say about him than I do, so you're totally cool, buddy. And yeah, I mean, Paul Rudd. Not to contradict you, Mark, but I wasn't concerned at all about his casting. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. And because while I think most studios would look at like Paul Rudd headlining a superhero movie, you know, you go back to look at how non-traditional their casting has been of these superheroes. Robert Downey Jr. is a star because of Iron Man right now. Oh, he was a star before. He was even nominated for Oscars. But you know what he was famous for the last 15 years before Iron Man? Being a junkie.
Yeah.
He was pretty much done. Back in the mid-'80s, we thought he was so washed up. What a shame. He's tragic. He pulled himself out, and they put him in Iron Man. He nailed it. Ed Norton nailed Hulk, and then Mark Ruffalo nailed Hulk. Mark Ruffalo being a major superhero. Chris Hemsworth, who? He nailed it as Thor. So I had no problem with him, with Paul Rudd as Ant-Man, and I thought he did a fine job. He did about what I kind of expect Paul Rudd to do, honestly. I didn't think he gave any more. I don't think he gave any less. That relationship, I agree with Dawn. I think that there was... I think it was Dawn that was saying it. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, I think that it was when they actually had a bit at the end where they were kissing. I'm like, oh, they are getting together. I did not see that coming, and it wasn't because it was a big surprise and twist of the script. It was because I thought the relationship was written, the chemistry was written so poorly that they weren't able to get much going between the characters. Maybe in a future movie where they had more time to explore that, we could add that exploration onto this first movie, and okay, now it makes sense. But yeah, I thought that just came out of nowhere, and I was like, oh, that's too bad.
I don't think so. There's nothing sexier than having your ass kicked over and over and over again by a woman.
Oh, I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that.
As soon as they showed that scene of her kicking his ass over and over again, I'm like, oh yeah, they're totally getting together.
It's on.
It's Evangeline Lilly, for God's sake.
Paul, what about you, sir? Final weigh in, final thoughts on as Paul Rudd as the Ant-Man?
I thought Paul Rudd worked because they did the Scott Lang Ant-Man. I honestly don't see him as like the Hank Pym version. That's because that Rudd had this great likability about himself, and you really needed that for the Scott role because, I mean, you took a burglar, and then you're expected to relate to him, and yeah, he's kind of a reformed burglar, but I think the Rudd really does make you like the character, and also to his quick wit. It was just I actually laughed. I laughed at a lot at his jokes, and I didn't laugh at him. I laughed at his jokes, which I liked.
Yeah, and the audience I was in when I watched it, which wasn't really huge, surprisingly.
No kidding.
But when we did watch it, I was laughing at his jokes as well. Not that he was being, slapstick or anything. Yeah, I totally agree that his jokes, the way they were written and the way he delivered them, were actually quite humorous. Which leads me to this other group that I just want to touch on really quick. And anyone can weigh in on these three characters that surprised the hell out of me because I didn't expect them in this film. We're talking about Lewis, Kurt, and Dave, the three guys who accompanied Mr. Scott Lang, who I was,
Genius.
The heist team.
The heist team.
Genius.
Yes. They were and what's funny is, and who else got this vibe though? When I first watched it, and Michael Pena, I know I mispronounced that. Glenn said it properly. I can't, because I'm horrible with names. But Michael was hilarious as Lewis. But I like the fact I was worried when I first saw him, and I'm sure you guys might have been too. I'm like, oh great, here's the comic relief. Their sole purpose is there to be the, just be the jokes, but they actually served some purpose to the main heist of the film. Did these characters surprise you? Anyone?
Lewis delivered the two best exposition things I've ever seen. It was like they told us all the stuff that happened, and you were actually riveted because he was like, it was great. It was funny, and it was a montage, and it's just unbelievable, creative. I liked it.
Exactly. I absolutely agree. He did that wonderful. He brought a whole new depth to that, to a whole new way to explain that with that montage when Lang asked, "So tell me more about this heist." And it went into the whole montage, and it explained everything, and then later on, Pym pointed out that he should look more closely at his second chances.
Yep.
It was a brilliant way of tying all that together, and it was. God, I had a perfect way of saying this earlier, and now it's gone. Damn.
I'm sorry. Too fast.
I'll think of it later.
Okay. Tony, what about you? What'd you think of these three? Were you glad that they weren't there just for a joke?
Well, actually, even though they were there for just a joke, I wouldn't mind, to be honest, but the fact that they did have some purpose helping out with Scott and the whole heist situation, I definitely think that made it much better, but even if they were comic reliefs, I still would have enjoyed them. And the first scene Michael Pena does pop up, I actually wasn't worried, because pretty much almost every line of dialogue Michael Pena says is just hilarious to me. Like this guy's talented. I see him in a lot of dramatic stuff, and he's done plenty of films, but it's nice to see that hopefully people can notice him a little more with this movie, because to me, he's one of the most underrated actors working today, and that makes me sad because he's personally one of my favorite actors working right now. So I'm glad that he had his time to shine, as well as his buddies. So overall, I could say I knew the group was going to be funny because I know the TV spot showed them briefly, but I did not think they were going to be this damn funny. So I really enjoyed the group in this movie.
Glenn, what about you?
Oh yeah, Pena stole every scene he was in.
Yeah.
He was he was super funny when you needed him to be funny, but he was also it was great to see that these guys, they're quote unquote criminals, but they're not like bad people.
Yeah.
And and when it comes down to it, like the fact that spoiler room, folks, building's gonna blow up. He's like, "Oh right, that guy."
Yeah, that was great. I didn't expect that.
So it's the fact that he's a criminal, but he's really not a bad guy.
Mhm.
And he was absolutely hilarious. The other guys were good too, but I mean, compared to Pena, I mean, he stole every scene he was in.
Agreed.
We're backing up. We're backing up.
What was that, Paul?
And I like how he said, and I like very quick when Michael Pena said, "Oh, they found out. Oh, Baskin Robbins always finds out, man."
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Baskin Robbins things was comedy gold.
And I think that helped show the comedy that they wrote in here. Wouldn't you say, Scott, the way they wrote these three characters was kind of a prime example of how they worked the comedy in here without getting to that edge, but not getting way over humorous. I thought they played at that edge very well, don't you? Or no? Did you have a problem?
I guess they played with the edge. Okay, look, putting all my ducks in a row here. You guys liked this movie a lot more than I did. I was really disappointed with Ant-Man, actually.
Really?
It's actually my least favorite Marvel movie so far, yeah.
Really? And why is that?
And it's just, just
The
going
humor?
I'm just gonna go bit by bit because we kind of have a thing, and we're gonna touch on them in order, I'm sure. But the guys, okay, but honestly, a lot of the things that this movie put in here were things that I would expect to see in a movie like this. And in fact, it would be things I would have expected to see in a movie from like about 12 years ago. I mean, one of the things I could have said was like, boy, 20th Century Fox, they just can't figure this formula. Wait, this is a Marvel movie? Because it feels like something I would expect to see in one of the adaptations that they were trying in the early 2000s. A lot of what happens in this movie. It doesn't mean it's one of the worst movies ever, but it was a letdown. It was a real letdown.
Wow.
And so Michael Pena, yeah, he did a decent job, but I did think that they were comic relief. I thought that was their primary purpose, and just throwing them in there to like serve as a cog in the machine is fine. But I didn't think they added a lot, and I especially thought that that the two lesser-known associates, especially the guy who was doing the worst Russian accent I'd ever heard.
I think he was supposed to, though. He was doing a bad Russian accent.
Yeah, that Russian accent was pretty bad, but I think it actually did fit for the character, though.
You know what? I don't know how much of this stuff was intentional and how much of it wasn't intentional. And but after a while, to me, it just didn't matter.
What did you expect though from a movie called Ant-Man, Scott? I guess I gotta play a little devil's advocate with you a little bit here.
Here we go. Okay, here we go. What did I expect from a movie called Ant-Man? Okay. Yeah. Well, first of all, it's not just that it's a movie called Ant-Man. Okay. You can lower your expectations if you want for a movie called Ant-Man. It was a Marvel movie called Ant-Man. Okay. And Marvel has actually done really well with their own properties. Has done really well, and they've always tended to surprise me in certain areas of their scripts. I mean, yeah, the Marvel movies are starting to look a little uniform how they're setting them up, but I'm trying not to dip into this kind of the been there, done that, like cynicism of a lot of the audience members when you hear them complain about that. Because these movies still can surprise me. This one, it felt like that's kind of exactly what I would expect to see in this movie. And also, I will say that if you do want me to move on from the comic relief, I can say one of the most disappointing aspects of it was the shrinking effects. I expected something a lot more magical and impressive when Ant-Man was tiny. I mean, you have a way to make the most ordinary things around you as these just incredibly strange landscapes and everything. And I felt like now they put like a little filter on the camera, and it was and a bunch of computer effects, and it was very obviously computer effects, and I just did not. Every time he shrunk, I just didn't feel anything. Nothing at all. I didn't feel any sense of magic. I didn't feel any sense of wonder. It didn't even matter that he was shrinking. He may have well zapped himself into something else. It doesn't matter. I just didn't feel... I didn't really feel anything from that at all.
Well, I gotta say, you got a higher expectation of Marvel films than I do, especially after Age of Ultron. So,
well, I mean, this is the beginning of their Phase 3. I mean,
no, this is actually end of Phase 2. This was supposed to be.
This is end of Phase 2. I thought Age of Ultron was end of Phase 2.
No, that's what a lot of people thought, but actually Ant-Man is technically the end of Phase 2, help set up for Phase 3, but it's still considered, everything I've read, is that this is the tail end of Phase 2. That's why everybody thought this film was going to happen before Age of Ultron. And when
it was supposed to happen. Well, it was supposed to happen in Phase 1. It was supposed to happen a long time ago.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, this is actually still considered a Phase 2 film.
Oh my God, that's like, oh my gosh, that's like taking this. It's like taking the Star Wars. It's like taking the Star Wars trilogy and then capping it off with an episode of Droids.
Wow. Well, we know how Scott feels. Hey, Cole, we know how you feel about the film. Polar opposite here. With this film, let's talk a little bit about the Avengers sequence.
Yeah,
and in that sequence, how much I loved I did enjoy this film.
Yeah.
This was the sequence that made me go, yup, Marvel is really trying now, where this felt to me, I'm going to set it up right now, this scene felt forced to me. It felt unneeded. It felt unneeded that they had to have it as Falcon and Sam Wilson that he meets up with. Wouldn't you agree?
I absolutely agree. Just to keep continuity, I want to respond to Scott. Can I briefly?
Sure, go ahead.
Because I agree with Scott, actually, on the fact that the special effects are dated. Mm-hmm. I would absolutely argue that's the point. Mm-hmm. And in fact, the only movie that I was reminded of while I was watching this was the original Invisible Man by James Whale. I really sort of felt like I was in a theater in 1930 because I'd forgotten it was about shrinking. You know, I'd forgotten it was even about that. I mean, by the time Rudd gets the costume, it's such a weird sort of espionage. I mean, the biggest special effect you've seen is a guy get splattered into a little blob. So the shrinking effects were almost coincidental. I mean, it comes as a... This is like a risky Marvel movie in the sense that I wasn't reminded of Marvel movies, and I'm going to lead in your question mark by saying when he's asked by Michael Douglas at some point, I forget what the question is, but Paul Rudd looks at him quite blankly about halfway through the movie and says, "You need to call the Avengers." Mm-hmm. And I had completely forgotten that these even existed in the same universe. And I laughed. The whole theater laughed. And that's where they should have left it. It would have been fine right there. They could have done whatever they wanted in future films. If this movie isn't a hit, they don't have to carry it on. Ant-Man could have been its own segregated story, whether or not they carry it on. And God knows I want to see Paul Rudd in the same room with Ruffalo and Downey. I think that would be frickin' awesome. I mean, I'll buy 10 tickets right now, you know, no doubt. But the scene that follows is totally unnecessary to the plot. Mm-hmm. It wasn't needed. And then they followed up. I mean, the climax of the movie is a cliffhanger. So again, like almost sort of like the previous movie we did, Terminator Genesis. Man, if this isn't a hit, then Ant-Man is sort of incomplete. You know what I mean? Yeah. Whereas if they had just not included that, it wouldn't matter. They could have done whatever they wanted. I mean, are those two scenes really going to inspire the Marvel audience that much? Maybe. I don't know. I think I would argue the movie doesn't need those, and all Paul Rudd needed to say was the Avengers in this movie, and then do its own thing, and maybe throw an Easter egg at the end.
Sure.
I'm sorry, maybe I'm sounding brutal towards
No.
hardcore comic fans, but
No, I mean, I totally agree with the way they set this film up. For me, with the expectation going in, first, I agree that when I watched this, the feeling I got from it when I watched it from the trailer was we're seeing an old 50s sci-fi film from the
Yeah.
50s. So sure, the ants look a little cheesy and things look a little, but I think that was the point. They were trying to capture the spirit of the old sci-fi superhero type of film, and I think I hope that's what they were going for, because that's the feeling I came out of it personally. But yeah, that Avengers scene just felt forced. Like, oh, we've got to remind people this is part of the universe when you don't by now. I mean,
No.
Paul, would you say that scene was needed? That could have just been any warehouse, right? That didn't have to be an Avengers scene.
It's true, but I'm going to backtrack, because I am actually one of those type of guys that they make these scenes for. I'm gonna preface this. I collect comic books, but I only really collect like 3 titles, but on occasion I will spend $80 on a trip because of crossovers. And this to me is the Marvel's equivalent of a comic book crossover, where everything, and I will buy a comic book just because that one character is in that one comic book, even though I normally wouldn't collect it. I would buy a comic book just because, yeah, my favorite superhero is in that movie or in that comic book. I'll purchase it because of that, and I think that to me was exciting, because I got to see the movie equivalent of it. And yes, it didn't seem like they needed that, but if you really wanted to nitpick, you could say yes, they did, because they needed that signal jammer, and it would make sense that it would be in the Stark building. Yeah, it didn't have to be a Avengers thing, but I thought it was kind of cool that they showed us what that warehouse was at the end of Age of Ultron. So to me it was just a continuation that says, hey, they're all connected. And I mentioned that earlier in the podcast, that I really do enjoy the interconnectivity. I like just the little pieces that drive people nuts about, if you have a movie poster of something in there, I'll read into that because it's enjoyable to me.
Well, and I want to add to what you said, Paul, not only the crossover, but if you spend any amount of time in a comic book store,
Mm-hmm.
what is one of the most common things you will hear people argue about? Who would win between this guy and this guy?
Yes.
And I think that whole scene is it's kind of a little bit of fan service to the comic book people.
Mm-hmm.
of the all right, I wonder if anyone's ever thought about this. Who would win between
Falcon and Ant-Man?
Falcon and Ant-Man? Because it probably hasn't come up that often at a comic shop. And it's usually like, who would win between Superman and
the Hulk,
Thor, and stuff like that. And this one is just kind of like they're taking that. That's how I feel it was. It was this kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of tribute, but also kind of a jab at the comic book people.
It also showed like Ant-Man had almost developed a special like shrinking martial arts form, because it was all about changing his size and going from small to large to small to large. And I thought, to me, that was his own version of a martial arts form that no one could, figure out because it was new.
Well, and it had to be fast too. That's why I understand with Scott's wanting to see more Wonder with the change, but I'm actually glad they didn't make it such a huge deal. I was actually kind of worried about that.
I didn't want the change itself to be. I should clarify. I didn't want the change itself to be a sense of wonder. I liked that it was boom that quick and stuff. I'm talking about when he actually got in there. And you guys were mentioning all these great old things like the old 50s movies. Like I'm thinking like Jack Arnold's Incredible Shrinking Man. I'm thinking the Irwin Allen series, Land of the Giants and stuff like that. Hell, I'm even thinking Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Yes.
Where a backyard becomes a magical and dangerous jungle. Well, I kind of wanted to see not necessarily the same thing, but get that same sense of awe and wonder, like, okay, you're on a complete. This is this is the exact same playing field you were on before, but since you have changed, now the rules are completely different, and I just didn't catch that from it.
But it is a Marvel film, and they got to move really fast through things. So your argument with Marvel being this, not a Marvel film. I'm just saying that they couldn't waste. They didn't want to spend too much time with his awe of being small in the small world. They established that with the bathtub. But I'm just saying, I get what you're saying.
I'm not saying he has to be odd. I'm saying that the audience needs to be odd. Now,
I understand that.
And a lot of you guys seem to have gotten that. You guys have gotten that sense that from like the same thing that you would in the older movies, which I think is great. I'm just saying that that didn't translate to me personally.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Hey, you got to have a little bit of spice in the room, right? No.
Yeah, and since we're on the subject, yeah, the Avengers cameo is completely gratuitous. And
it is not, because this is gonna be me being all comic booky. What
did I do? What did I do?
Spoiler. That is actually a spoiler for Civil War.
Well, yes.
Yeah, that they tacked onto the end, and it felt like, okay, we have a movie, and they say, okay, now how are we gonna move it in with the other Marvel movies? Oh, do we really have to? Yes, we have to. Okay, well, let's shoehorn. Okay, let's say that they have to get a signal jammer. They don't have to get a signal. Let's say they have to get a signal jammer. We'll make sure that they have to get it from Avengers, and then we'll bring in one of the Avengers. Like, oh my God, who? Like Hulk or Iron Man? Like, no, they're not going to do Falcon. We'll get Falcon to do it.
Hold on.
Falcon is cool. Come on.
Falcon is cool, but let's face it, he's one of the second tier.
Okay.
And they said, like, okay, now what else? Okay, we got to have a thing at the end. Okay. Oh. We'll say he knows a guy. Okay, couldn't we have just said this because S.H.I.E.L.D. knows everything about every single power person that later on they bring him in?
Okay.
We can say it, but we're not going to. That's what it felt like. It felt like excuses that were made. And that's just me. I mean, I'm just saying that's how it played off to me, and I was like,
sure.
Come on, guys. I thought it hurt the movie, actually.
Yeah, Glenn is right. It did set up the end scene that they were working on for it. Plus, I think they were playing off a little bit that you knew Ant-Man was going to be in the Avengers 2.75. So, Captain America Civil War. So, no,
yeah.
Glenn is right. They did put that in there so they could help set it up so it made sense.
I don't think they even needed to.
But okay, Scott. Don? Hi, Don. How are you?
He's expressing his opinion.
I'm getting my notebook here.
Don, okay? Don is on.
So, Don, that adventure scene, how did you feel about it?
Oh my God. Okay, so I'm obviously viewing this movie quite differently than you people are.
Ooh.
So I'm viewing it as more of as I was watching it, and I don't know if I don't remember if I specifically talked to you about this, Mark. Mm-hmm. It felt to me like it was set up more like a crime heist movie.
Oh, absolutely.
Kind of the way Daredevil is more of a crime movie. Mm-hmm. So what is the one thing that always happens in a crime heist movie? You get the main protagonist, yes. Yeah. You get the main protagonist, who in this case would be Scott Lang, thrust into a situation where he is kind of put in a trial by fire and not expected to succeed. He's in way over his head, and so what more fortuitous way to do this than chucking him into a situation where he has to rob the Avengers? Now, the big question that I'm having is, did they toss that scene with that warehouse in at the end of Age of Ultron as part of Age of Ultron, or did they toss that scene in to set up for Ant-Man?
That's true. That's a good question.
So I don't feel that scene was gratuitous. Mm-hmm. I think that one way or another, it was completely set up for that crossover, whether it was planned from Age of Ultron or not. It was completely set up for that scene as Scott Lang's trial by fire, and to introduce him and get him in the Avengers radar. Okay, that was probably the simplest way I could put that.
I understand that. Yeah, I mean, it played. I mean, I'm not arguing. I just disagree. But yeah, I totally see that. That totally makes sense.
I mean, if you're going with the heist film formula, it makes perfect sense.
Right. What better way?
Who else would he have been up against to do that trial by fire without introducing some other gratuitous situation that would have been even worse than setting him up against the Avengers?
I will say that the movie was at its best when it was a heist movie. When it was like, for instance, when we actually did see him kind of infiltrating that big lair at the end. I thought, okay, that's what I like, because I mean, just like how Captain America was like when you got down to it, was an old-fashioned World War II movie.
Right.
You know. I thought this movie was at its best when it was like a heist movie.
And Tony, last but not least, to weigh in on this scene, I didn't expect to start such a heated debate.
I didn't think we would either.
That Avengers scene. You mentioned you liked the cameo?
Yeah. I just figured I mentioned the comments because I know how passionate everyone was getting. But yeah, I like the cameo. Don basically took the words out of my mouth, honestly. I really liked it because, one, it showed us like the aftermath of Age of Ultron because of how that movie ended. So I thought that was cool that we got to see the Avengers shelter, and I liked that we saw the Falcon because it did add the comic relief to it. I loved how the Falcon and Ant-Man, they were having a little fight with each other. Like, think about a Falcon versus a tiny dude. That's really funny to me when I think about it. And like what Don pointed out, it's a nice way to introduce Ant-Man to Captain America Civil War, or AKA Avengers 2.5.
2.75. There's a lot more in there. Yeah, there's so many people in there. No, but I get what you're saying. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and that's basically all I have to say. Those are my reasons to why I like the cameo. Like, sure, maybe it didn't have to be in the movie, but I do feel at the same time it was necessary because it is a nice way to get the character into Civil War. It makes a lot of sense to me.
So I'll ask this because I guess for me, I am a fan of comics, but I've been out of it for many years, and I'm not as devout to comics as many in this room, nor probably the main audience. But I guess for me, with the Marvel films, they're getting to a point to where, and I'm probably off on this, I think they might start alienating a little bit or turning off some of your average film goers that you were putting in the seats earlier on, because of these interactions and these crossovers. And they're great for comic book fans, as proven here. I mean, you guys who are really heavy into comics love it. For me, I guess I'm getting a little exhausted by it and a little too much overexposure. The line with the Avengers, I'm with Cole, would have probably been enough. But then we put in a whole cameo in here, and then we put in the end sequence with, as spoiler room folks, the first credit sequence with the Wasp, which I love. I'm like, I want a Wasp movie right frickin' now.
Yeah.
With Evangeline Lilly. But then at the very end, they toss in a teaser for Civil War.
Yeah.
And for me, I guess I'm like, for me, it's just getting one of those things where I think I'm getting too much, and I guess I might fall into more of the casual film viewer than the comic book fan. I just want a good film, and it was good without those references, and I understand they put it in for the fanboys to get them in the seat. But if they were going to do that, I think they should have promoted this movie a heck of a lot more. I mean, in all honesty, I mean, if we're putting these, I mean, the biggest news you got was that it was, Ant-Man was going to be in Civil War. You found that out before, and then you had posters with Ant-Man on Avengers body parts or weapons.
Including Black Widow's boobs.
Well, no, that was a fan-made.
That was a
trailer.
fake one. Yeah.
That was a fake
Oh,
poster
really?
to it. Yeah, I don't think Disney would have ever put Ant-Man on Black Widow's boobs. Or her-
Disney doesn't even like what Amy Schumer does with Star Wars, so
Yeah,
they're definitely not
no,
like
I guess for me, it's my concern that they're getting to it now to where, they're really playing more towards those people who have followed these films all the way through since the beginning, rather than the person who goes, oh, you know what, I'd like to take in a superhero film, and I go, you see Ant-Man. Am I off on it? Are they possibly doing a little bit too much with the tie-ins constantly with these films, or am I just old? I
actually
No,
have
you're not
another
old,
question that kind of relates to that.
Mhm.
Regarding marketing,
Mhm.
a big concern and a big thing that we've talked about in the past has been the excessive marketing. You know exactly what you're going to get. You know every little detail about the movie. You might as well have seen the movie before you pay in to go see the movie. And now we're concerned that we haven't seen enough of that with Ant-Man. And yet we all seem to have liked Ant-Man.
No, we did enjoy it. I
Except for
wasn't
Scott.
saying I didn't. No, you make a good
No,
point.
I
Let me
would say it's
clarify.
mismarketed. I didn't go expecting to see any of those characters.
Mhm.
And I didn't want to. Quite honestly, it's not that I'm sick of it. I already saw Avengers and spent a lot of money on it. Spent probably $40 on my 2 viewings.
And,
I didn't need more Avengers this summer. The one Avengers line was plenty for me. And again, I'm not kissing my boss's ass, but I'm with Mark. I'm a devout comic book fan, but I've been out of the loop. I would say I had a house fire, and my comic book collection got hit with a fire hose. So they're still readable, but it was a real lesson from whatever you want to call it, the fates, that how much do they mean to you when you can't sell them one day, So I don't buy them anymore. I can still read what I have, but I've been out of the loop. I've been out of the loop for a while, man, and I think it would be nice to have a movie that you can still tie in if it's successful, that is its own thing. I mean, can't they do that without having all these random cameos that somebody who spends money might not recognize? I don't know. It seems odd to me. It's becoming really excessive.
I think so too. Yeah, it's really excessive. I've been on and off in and out of the loop. I was big into comics as a kid, and then I got back into them about 6 or 7 years ago, and that only I was really hardcore into them too, like for like a few years, and then I stopped because honestly I was like, Jesus, this is more expensive than my movie collection.
Yeah.
Comic collecting, just keeping up on your comics and buying each one is, if you like a lot of them, is hard. I've known people in my life with hardcore drug problems that were not spending as much as I was spending on just trying to get caught up with the frickin' Runaways, So I was like, geez, okay. So I had to go cold turkey. So I had to go cold turkey from comics, and but I was still interested in them, and I'd still try to get digital comics whenever I could and stuff. But yeah, I'm just finding I like that there's the crossover. I think that's a brilliant piece of inventiveness that Marvel has done. But I don't think it needs to be in every movie, and that was my issue, is that I think that I'm with Mark on this one. I just think it's getting excessive. I think it was one of those things that we're putting this in here because that's what people expect. Well, I don't care what people expect. I don't care what people expect. I want a good movie. If you can, don't give me what you think I'm expecting to see. Give me something that I'm not expecting to see.
Yeah.
But the casual moviegoer doesn't necessarily sit through the credits. They don't need to see those extra added scenes that that drive people like us nuts.
They sit through these. They sit through these credits. They
well,
Maybe
well,
in your theater, but a lot of people left in mine.
no,
so.
Paul, you are
Really?
right, and
Yeah.
and the
Yes.
scenes after aren't what I had really the issue with. It's the fact that you have it feels like we have to have some cameo or major scene reference to the past one, and I understand Glenn's comment as well, and maybe I'm sounding like a total ass here, but no, I completely understand Glenn's that is the comic book fan, but for me, Marvel, when they first started out this whole thing, felt like they were, while they were trying to appeal to the comic book fan, they were also trying to, find a balance for the the common, the average moviegoer who may not be familiar with the comics but still, enjoy them. And I guess after watching so many Marvel movies and seeing so many interconnections, for me as just the average viewer first, and then I do like comics, the crossovers just feel a little shoehorned in sometimes, but I understand they're trying to get the rabid fans in because they're going to keep coming back and paying the money like Cole did for Mad Max and every day watch it. But then I would have expected the marketing for this film to be at least a little bit more orientated towards the Ant-Man film rather than what Ant-Man is attached to. And I guess that's what I was going for. Dawn is right. You're right. I do say, we don't want spoilers. And I'm not talking about spoilers, but it was just like every news that came out at all about this film, everybody hyped about, was everything but this film. It was felt like Marvel was kind of like, oh yeah, there's Ant-Man over here. And they actually have some major points in here that do tie in with their set up some of the rest of the universe.
Yeah.
And actually, I think they do it better here than they did in Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, I like this film better than Ultron in that sense. But on the other hand, just the approach, it felt odd compared to the way they had approached other films that made it feel like they almost didn't have confidence in this film.
I don't think they did.
Well, I think they had a certain amount, but I thought that the marketing was certainly less. I mean, it was certainly less. It was a lot less. But I mean, I think going back to something, the Mark, that you yourself have said, if Disney wants something to be a hit, it's going to be a hit. You said that on this show. You said it on my show. You said it on pretty much everywhere, and I think you're right about that. And it seemed like that there was nothing for the longest time, and I don't know. Maybe I'm just speaking for myself because I don't have normal TV at my house.
Mm-hmm.
I just have this Roku. And, on some of the channels that you pop up in there, you'll see an ad, but you'll see usually the same ads. And for like a couple weeks before this came out, Ant-Man. I'm like, whoa, what the hell? They just suddenly realized that they have Ant-Man coming out? So,
maybe it could also be because of the whole Edgar Wright situation, because I know there's people that are apparently boycotting Ant-Man because of Edgar Wright leaving the project.
See, and that's another thing, too, with that. I'm like, I understand you guys were, really set on that, but these things change a lot more than you might think. It just
happens all the time.
It really happens all the time. I mean, Glenn, you've kind of quiet on this. Am I being a total ass in thinking that I think they're pushing this linked universe a little bit too much and possibly alienating some of the casual fans that they were hoping to pull in with the first films?
They're not alienating casual. Okay, the casual fan is a moron.
Well, not casual fan. I mean, casual moviegoer, not casual fan. So I'm a moron.
Casual
okay, no, that's
moviegoer
fine.
is a moron.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
What will alienate them is not enough explosions or not enough women in tight pants. That's what's going to alienate them.
Yeah.
The average movie-going public. I mean, these are the people who kept Full House on the air for 738 years. Your casual public. They're easy to please. That is the lowest common denominator.
Your casual public is the one that likes 50
Michael
Shades
Bay
of Grey.
films. And Michael Bay films.
Yeah,
Your casual public is great to boost ticket sales, but they're not the ones who are going to see the, you know, they're not going to be the, you know, the Coles of the world going out and seeing the movie 78 times and paying, you know, full price every time. They're not going to, you know, they're not going to be the ones who are going to, you know, mortgage their home to get all the collectibles. So they have to do something for both. They really do. And the tie-ins, yes, I think they could possibly cut back a little bit, but that's you know, it's this whole universe thing they have going on where it's all tied together.
Well,
and
did you like the movie, Glenn?
What's that?
Did you like the movie, Glenn?
Ant-Man?
Yeah.
I loved Ant-Man.
Oh,
I think it
right
is probably one of the best actual comic book adaptations to hit the screen.
Word.
As far as an actual feel of a comic book.
Yeah.
Because it's not just solely, it's not just this action movie.
No,
a lot of comics are not just pure action all the time. There's a lot of other stuff going on, and this Dawn really hit the nail on the head. Where this is a heist movie.
Right.
This is Paul Rudd doing the Italian job. That's what this is.
Yep.
And it is, and that's why I enjoyed it, was because it felt different than the other Marvel films, especially since we just were coming off of the Age of Ultron hangover. You know, which I still enjoyed, but you're totally right. This is a different film. It is a heist film more than a superhero film, and that's why I liked Winter Soldier, was because that was an espionage film more so than a superhero film. You know, so I mean, don't get me wrong, I did really enjoy this film. I guess for me, I just feel like we already get the end credit sequence, which is what they used to leave it at the end for, you know, majorly connecting the characters, and now we're getting that in the middle of the film, and you know, 2 or 3 scenes in the film, at least with this one, where I guess I was hoping it would stand a little bit more on its own rather than working that in there for me. You know, and I see everybody's point. I guess it just, for me, looking at it, it is a heist film, and you're involving a superhero. So Dawn's right in that, you know, that what better way to challenge? And no, I'm not looking for spoilers for the promotional stuff, but it just felt like they were giving direction to everything but the actual film up until the last couple of weeks. You know.
Well, and to be honest, Ant-Man fighting against Falcon, that is probably one of the few times outside of Loki that the hero of a Marvel film has squared off against someone who is not completely one-dimensional. Yes,
that's the last thing I wanted to talk about tonight. Thanks, Glenn. We'll get your opinion first. Yellow Jacket, unfortunately, is, I know people love these films and love Marvel, and I've really enjoyed the Marvel films, but the villains have been weak in Yellow Jacket. Glenn, go. How'd you feel about Yellow Jacket?
All right, so Yellow Jacket. Oh, okay. He is... I'm not going to say he's one-dimensional. He's 1 1/4 dimensional. because he's better than Ronan was in Guardians of the Galaxy, and he's better than, the guy is so boring I can't remember his name from Thor Dark World.
Right.
American.
Yeah.
Yes, that guy. Those villains, they might as well be the grown-ups in every Charlie Brown episode where it's just, you know, it's here's Thor, and it's like, you know, or you know, Star-Lord. What's that, Ronan? Wah, 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 wah. Yes, Ronan, you're right. Wah, 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 wah. Yes, Ronan. Wah, wah. That's there's like nothing to them.
That's too awesome. Peanuts will be coming out in November.
Outside of Loki, which I think has a lot to do with Hiddleston just either running with it and saying, forget the writers, I'm going to do what I want with this character. Yeah, I agree.
I think that also goes to the first Thor movie being made by Kenneth Branagh, who is a Shakespearean.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you just got more of just that, you know, there was more depth to the character, and it was just simply, here's the bad guy, we're done. That's all you need. This is the guy in the black hat. That's the only explanation you need. He's the bad guy.
Well, not only that with Yellow Jacket, but yes, this is the spoiler room, folks. I mean, here he's got this great technology, and who does he go to first? No, we're not going to this government or this government. No, I'm just going to go right to Hydra. I'm like, how more cliche villain can you be? I'm like, you didn't you even give it a little bit more thought? You know, I mean, you went to Shield, but the Shield guy was crooked anyway. So, you know, what about you, Paul? How'd you feel about Yellow Jacket?
Yellow Jacket I didn't like, but the other part of him, Darren Cross, I loved. Only because it got to show us what Hank Pym could have become had his wife not died. I think, imagine Michael Douglas kind of going down that path and not having that tragic event. He would have been, I think, just like his protege would have been. So that's why I really liked the Darren Cross character. Once he put on the suit and he became just basically another faceless man in a suit again, I found him less interesting. Although the funniest scenes in the movie come with him in the suit.
Yeah. Well, the battle with the train, you see it in the trailer. That is one of the most entertaining.
I like the Fly Zapper more.
Or the Fly Zapper was great. Yes.
Spoilers.
Well, it's The Room, you know.
Yeah, I know.
Cole, what about you? With Yellow Jacket, though, is he the long line of Marvel MCU villains outside of maybe Loki that he is kind of just this shallow? Yeah, he's the bad guy.
Oh man, I thought it was just fine. I thought it was just fine. Once he shot the guy and then wiped it up like a puddle of snot, I was sold. I thought that was really creepy and very cool. Of course, I had a cold when I watched it, so it was especially creepy. No, I liked it, man. I liked that actor. I actually made a mental note while I was watching him. This is remarkable, but man, I don't really enjoy. You know what? I enjoy Loki in Thor's world. He's just fine. Once you have like Robert Downey Jr. like making a drink and saying, "Hey, guess what? We're the Avengers and you're toast."
Yeah.
Like the first Avengers, I automatically kind of think maybe not the best villain. So I like Loki in Thor's world. I only bring that up because Loki seems to be a point of like a strength in the series, and I much like the villain in Age of Ultron. I thought that was the more intimidating villain, whereas Loki is kind of almost. I mean, really, when you watch that scene, it's like Robert Downey Jr. is about to toast all of the mayhem you see. It's like, hey, get ready, audience. We're going to kick this guy's ass. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. I love this villain in this movie. And I like the Yellow Jacket at the end. I thought all that stuff was great. When he shows up in the little girl's bedroom, that was creepy. I mean, I can remember being that age, and being afraid of alien abduction and stuff. And if all of a sudden a big old guy in a Yellow Jacket suit flew in, holy shit, that'd be crazy.
Don, what about you in Yellow Jacket? Is he kind of like many of the other Marvel villains? Not all, but many that really are just there to be the bad guy. I mean, we don't really have much more to them than that.
Like Paul, I was really impressed with the Darren Cross character. As a matter of fact, one of the scenes that I thought was the most memorable and most intense scenes that really made me empathize with Darren Cross and then subsequently to the Yellow Jacket was the scene between Darren Cross and Henry Pym when Cross asked, "What is it that you saw in me all those years ago to take me on as your apprentice?" And Pym says, "I saw myself." And then Cross asks, "Why did you abandon me?" And Pym says, "Because I saw myself." And I felt that they played that scene so well, and they emoted so well that alone stood out and made that character deeper for me.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I can. Those were some really excellent scenes, definitely. Unexpected, I think, for his character, for that angle of him as for Cross, and then once he gets in the suit, he's a bad guy in a suit.
He was a bad guy all along, just,
Right. With
Now he
lasers.
was-
Yeah.
yeah, now he was Iron Man bad guy.
Now he was Iron Man bad guy. Yeah. Scott, what about you? Yellow Jacket?
I'll go one further. I'll call him Lex Loki.
Oh,
Because he plays the part just like Kevin Spacey did in Superman Returns, but it's another villain with daddy issues.
there you go.
And just like Loki had daddy issues, and just like Ultron had daddy issues.
Mhm.
And honestly, of all the things in this movie, I felt that the villain was the weakest point. Now, I will say this in his favor: he has good taste in music.
Yes.
He had The Cure's Disintegration queued up on his iPod, and we got even to hear a little bit of Plain Song. That was nice. But having said that, I found this. I mean, I just, when I heard Cole, you were so eloquent, you were so wonderful talking about the villains and stuff and what you liked about them. I was actually
Thanks, man.
sadly reminded that I haven't been completely impressed with villains since Phase 1. I thought we had a good crop of villains there. I liked Obadiah Stane, I liked the Abomination, I liked Loki, I liked the Red Skull, and I liked Mickey Rourke as kind of the pseudo Whiplash there.
Yeah, yeah.
Because I love Mickey Rourke, he's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the villains have been kind of standard, as Glenn was pointing out and stuff, and this guy's even more standard because again, this seemed like some, not to repeat myself, but it seemed like something I would have seen him in somebody else's superhero movie from 2002 when we got a glut of Marvel movies released to theaters, and every now and then there'd be a Spider-Man 2, but most of the time there was a Ghost Rider, and so it's like how about this one? How about this? No shit, and so that's why I was so excited when Marvel started making these movies themselves.
Mhm.
I think they're really dropping the ball on the villains now. If I was going to be kind of more cynical and just look at the dollar side, they don't need to. They made there are complaints and scaring people that say is Marvel's reign over because Ant-Man only made $58 million. Dude, when a movie called Ant-Man brings in $58 million,
Nothing to worry about.
After what we all kind of agree was a botched promotional campaign, I mean, they're fine. But
This wasn't marketed as a Marvel movie, was it? I mean, did I miss something?
it was towards the end. It was.
Oh, all I saw was the trailer before Mad Max screenings.
Yeah,
Like,
towards the end, they started doing posters of Ant-Man standing next to other Marvel characters, or
oh,
or
shit,
on
I didn't
them.
know that. Now I
And
sound
What's
stupid.
what's
Yeah,
funny
it
is the
sounds
Marvel
stupid.
logo is the thing that shrinks.
Yeah, and those TV spots. As soon as Ant-Man opened, all those ads I was talking about on my Roku, suddenly the part they're all playing is the part with the Falcon, including the last scene.
Oh my God.
Oh, jeez.
I didn't realize that.
No,
Yeah.
that's fine. You're totally cool. But yeah, I mean, I think they're doing okay. But I mean, I think they're really dropping the ball on these villains, and this is one of the most least inspired villains I've seen. It was stock comic book villain number 12. But here's the thing, is that these are the people who made these characters. They made the heroes so wonderful. And there's a long history of great villains in their comic books too. Now, true, Ant-Man isn't known for having a lot of core villains. I mean, he has seldom been able to hold on to a title that runs more than 12 issues in the past, if I'm not mistaken. That's just fact. I mean, I think the last one was this thing called The Irredeemable Ant-Man, which I hear was good, but I've never read it. But still you have a wealth of characters to draw from, and that's why it's kind of a letdown to see them handled so sloppily. I thought that scene in the washroom when he splats the guy, I thought, how many times have we seen that scene in a movie before where a guy, he unveils his plans and one guy says, I don't know about that, and we've seen, and then they got killed. I mean, we've seen it in Dick Tracy, which was handled much better there and stuff. We've seen it in other things like, other movies like for decades now. We didn't really need that to tell us that he was evil. In fact, it would have been more interesting if we saw him just be really callous about the animal testing. And then eventually you realize, like, oh no, this guy's really gone off his rocker. Because they make it sound like he went off his rocker because of the particles were affecting his brain. They made reference to that in the movie. But I'm like, really? Because he seemed pretty much like a raving lunatic from the second he came on screen. Because he, like, immediately greased a dude. Literally. And so I was like, a lot of it was just stock stuff, and if they were playing, and if they had said, hey, we're aiming this movie at a really, really young audience, then I would have been cool with it, but they didn't. And so I thought they blew it there.
Tony, what about you? Yellow Jacket, the long line of Marvel villains, are they kind of putting them to the wayside because of the title characters?
Yeah, Yellow Jacket was definitely one of my flaws with this movie. Especially the David character, I didn't think was that interesting. He did have that good scene with Michael Douglas. I'll give Don that, but other than that one scene, I just didn't really care about the character. I didn't really find him intimidating, and his reason for immediately getting to the Yellow Jacket suit when he obviously saw his building crumble, I just thought that felt really forced. It felt really shoehorned. It kind of makes up for it because the finale was like Thor: The Dark World, where shit just got really wacky. You saw a giant ant, and you saw a freaking giant Thomas the Train come out of nowhere in the front porch. That
was my favorite part. I will say that was my favorite part of the giant ant and the giant Thomas the Tank Engine.
And here's where I'm going to go, where this is the advantage of them having established the universe, and I fall at Glenn's feet for this one, with the crossovers, that it is true. Since we do have the crossover universe, though, this world, the people, the common people, the average people in this world have seen some pretty whacked out shit in their time with the New York, with the alien invasion and everything. So a large Thomas the Train and a large ant, while the people kind of give it a look, aren't nearly, or don't seem to be nearly as shocked as maybe they would had you not established this universe to where aliens have attacked and mega, villains are threatening the world.
They're saying, "Oh man, superheroes must be beating themselves up each other up again." I swear, why do we live in a metropolitan area? Gee.
What were you gonna say, Tony?
I was going to say the finale was definitely the funniest part by far of this movie. And I also laughed really hard when Michael Pena and his guys, they saw all of those policemen, and then you see him going, back up, back up.
That's just one of those great moments where, as Glenn put it, Michael just really stole the scenes on it. So even though Yellow Jacket wasn't a strong villain, I only found him intimidating when he was looking at Scott Lang's daughter in his room, because if I was young, I would be freaked out if a villain was actually looking at me like that. But other than that, he wasn't strong, but I think that wacky finale totally makes up for it, at least for me. And it fit. By that time, it kind of fit into the world that they established for Ant-Man and the technology as well they established, I thought. Now, really, just quick, let's talk about how they set things up for the future. Glenn and Paul and those who are into the films a little more, the whole Quantum Zone thing that they did with that, does that play more into later on when we are going to go to the Doctor Strange characters? Because they mentioned about Quantum Zone, and that part really, I loved the wackiness, the kind of surrealness of it, but I was like, okay, where are they going with this? What's the deal with this quantum zone? Does that lead us to the phase? Was it 4 characters or phase 3 characters?
I think
Paul or Glenn?
I think it possibly plays into that. It might play into other things. There's actually, I saw Ant-Man twice now.
Okay.
And I paid closer attention to the whole quantum zone scene, and you can't quite make out what it is, but there is something else there with him. He does not see it.
Right.
So I don't know if they're going to play something into Doctor Strange, or if they're playing something into the fact that maybe that is Hope's mom. The original Wasp there. I don't know. So I'm not sure how I felt about the look of it.
Sure.
But I think it's definitely going to play out somewhere else later on.
I was going to say, because it was brought up more than a couple times, more so than just establishing that was going to happen. Because that was such a huge hammer of foreshadowing.
Yeah, and that's modern American filmmaking. It's the there is no foreshadowing. There is clubbing you over the head until you're bleeding profusely in your eyes.
With Mjolnir.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when they did that, I'm like, oh, okay, so when are we going to see this? Because when he goes, don't mess with the regulator, you could just keep shrinking, and I'm just like, oh yeah, yep, that's gonna happen. It's just a question
it was our don't cross the streams moment.
Yeah.
But it needed to happen to give Hank hope.
Yes, it did. Yeah, no, it did.
Both ways.
And that's the one of the things I loved about this film, and why it's, for me, one of my favorite Marvel films, is that one, as we've mentioned before, it didn't feel like a normal Marvel superhero film. It felt like a heist film, just like, Winter Soldier felt more like an espionage film. This thing also had, I think, some of the most heart to it. I mean, the whole father-daughter relationship, we get parallelisms here with Scott Lang and his daughter, and then we get Hank Pym and his daughter. And am I off on that they were doing kind of a parallel, these guys are in similar situation?
Oh, definitely.
Definitely.
I think it's one of those things where people can say that this is about how fathers relate to their daughters, and Hank Pym, because he was so guilt-ridden about what he had done in the past, Hank Pym was, he sent her off to boarding school. He forgot about her. He'd abandoned her. That's something that Scott Lang could easily do, given the sins of his past, but he's determined not to. So because if he does, the relationship is going to end where they're all estranged like that, where they barely know each other as adults,
Right. But I think we all agree this one, probably out of all the Marvel films that have come out so far, this one had the most heart and felt a little family friendly. I think probably some more so than some of the others. Would you say?
Age of Ultron was pretty family friendly. Oh no,
wait.
I don't know. I guess, yeah, but, I don't know.
Well, there wasn't a guy getting chopped up in blades of a plane like in Captain America, so.
That's true. I guess it was giving a more. I guess it was a more. I hadn't really thought about it, but I guess it is a more down to earth story about that. I guess I didn't think it did a good enough job for me to really freak out about it, but.
What about you?
Not so all blasé and hipsterish about it. Like, oh yes, it's so emotional. I don't want to be like that that does that, But it's like, yeah, okay, I guess.
Yeah, Glenn. What about you? Did you feel like this is probably one of the more family-friendly fare of Marvel films, or?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
This is I would say this is probably the most family-friendly in quite a while.
Right. And that's not saying it's a bad thing at all. I'm just saying out of all of them, I'm watching this going, this is one that I could feel comfortable with you taking your whole family to, and not, really feeling questionable either about one of the outfits that someone was wearing. I mean, they dropped 2 shits in there, but that's about it, you know. And even
one
the
pussy.
way, yeah, well, yeah, and the way they dropped, you know, the way they even he basically blobs the bad, you know, the bad guy blobs the people with his little device. That wasn't even too like, it's like, oh, okay, you know. So
Gross,
yeah,
gross looking.
it was gross looking, but I mean, it wasn't too extreme. It was quick, and it was like most young kids will be like, "Oh, he turned him into a booger." You know,
Exactly.
so it is one with heart as well. So let's go down the line. We'll wrap it up here really quick. Just a final thought with Ant-Man as far as what we're going to see next with the next set of phase films with Captain America Civil War, as I like to call it, Avengers 2.75 or 2.5, because there are a lot. It pretty much feels that way. What do you want to see, or what do you hope they do with that film? And I guess your final thoughts with Ant-Man. Go ahead, Cole.
Well, it's Captain America Civil War, correct?
Yes, that's the next one.
Yeah. Man, I didn't like the first Captain America, loved the second. So, and the directors are the guys who did the second Captain America, correct?
The Vicious Brothers, I believe.
Yeah, they're the guys who are doing Civil War, I think.
Or no, not the Vicious Brothers. Who are they? I forgot now.
In any case, I'm trying to think of what the film will be. I hadn't thought about it. I mean, if Ant-Man is in it, and I know Downey is in it, obviously.
Yeah.
I am vaguely aware of the comics. I've never directly read them. I've seen some panels from them.
Oh, the Russo brothers. That's who it is. And Joe and Anthony.
Man, I really don't know. I mean, I would like. I'm gonna go to it because obviously they're not gonna make Iron Man 4 before they make Avengers 3. So, you know, this is my fast food until then. So, you know, until Infinity Wars, yeah, I'll go.
And they're bringing.
I don't know what to expect. I would hope that, you know, Paul Rudd gets some good scenes with Downey. That would be hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have any expectations.
Sure. And Don, what about you? What are we? You looking forward to the next one with that little teaser scene that we had at the end? And how did you kind of feel with Ant-Man?
Well, I like the whole. I know it's not the popular thing. I am the audience that enjoys the whole comic book feel of everything, and everything about comic books is intertwined with everything else, and they reboot the universe every other week.
Yay.
I accept that. I have no problem with it, because, you know, comic books are crazy and a little bit psychotic. And as we fans, as the fans embrace the psychosis of the comic book universe, I look forward to the next movie. I did enjoy this. Then again, I'm perfectly capable of looking at this movie as a standalone movie and ignoring everything else, and having fun with it. So, very much, well, I don't know if I'm very much looking forward to it, but I'm looking forward to where they take it and how they develop the characters. I didn't feel this one was as much of a setup movie, but it was definitely an introduction movie.
Right.
And why they would choose an introduction movie to end Phase 2 is beyond me, but hey, you know, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And we, you know, move on. So, yeah, I'll see the rest of them because I'm a completionist whore.
Glenn, how about you, sir?
I will keep seeing stuff. Of course I will. Who am I
Right.
kidding? And anyone who says they're not is lying.
Be completionist whore.
Yeah.
That's what part of it is. Is part of it. Part of it is just the fact that you always think it's like, well, you know, because there are the ones that were great.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Winter
Yeah.
Soldier was great. I loved the original Thor. The first, Avengers was amazing. And the thing is as long as there are ones that you can look back on and say, yeah, remember this one, you're going to hope that the next one is as good as that. And the thing is even the ones I didn't like as much, it's not like I walked out of Age of Ultron going, well, that was the biggest pile of shit that I ever stepped my foot in without wearing my shoes, and now it's between my toes and feels awful. No, I walked out and I said, that was okay.
Yeah,
I wasn't like, oh man, that sucked. So the fact
you
that
were entertained, and I
was
felt the same way.
entertained.
Yeah.
I was entertained. Thank you, Russell Crowe. And as long as I'm entertained, I'm going to keep going back. There are, it's the Transformers. First Transformers movie did not entertain me at all, and I have not watched any of the other ones.
You're better off that way.
I am. So it's the fact that I got it left a good taste in my mouth with the first modern what I'll call modern Marvel movie, and because that good taste, I will the whore that I am, I will keep coming back for that. As long as you keep giving me what I want, or at least to a degree of what I want, I will keep coming back.
Cool. And Paul, what about you, sir?
I felt that the quantum world does introduce the idea of unlimited and infinite possibilities. So I think that what's coming up for the MCU is going to be a lot of new possibilities. Going to be new characters, new powers, new types of stories. That's what I'm hoping for. That's what I'm expecting. As for Ant-Man itself, I hope that it becomes really successful. I know before even they started, releasing Ant-Man, I was telling people I'm hoping that the next Marvel film will be from the producers of Ant-Man.
Yeah.
And I was joking about that a little bit, but I really do want it to be successful because I want Marvel to see that they can make other movies. It doesn't have to be action. It can be a heist movie. It can be an espionage thing. It could be a comedy. They could do so much more because comic books, if you read the comic books, they're infinitely interesting because they don't all follow the same formula.
Right.
They're all unique, and that's a possibility. And I think Ant-Man really does deliver on that promise, and that's why I hope that it will be more successful. And people will just say, yeah, it was a good movie. It's not a failure.
No, and I feel the same way because not only just in the Marvel universe, but other independent comic books that are trying to get made into feature films, the indie films, the darker ones, the unusual ones, these spin-off ones that might not be so popular. Ant-Man successful shows other investors that, oh, hey, you can take a lesser-known property and actually make it successful, and it might spawn other comic book films besides stuff from Marvel or DC, because there are some really great indie stuff out there, as you all know, that would be fantastic films, I think, and not just TV series. So, Scott, what about you? What would you like to see from the next Marvel film, or what are you expecting from Phase 3? And I think we caught how you felt about Ant-Man, but...
Well, yeah, I don't want to make it sound like... And I know that sometimes on some of my ranting about it that it might sound like this... I think this is like one of the worst films of the year. I don't. It's actually not terrible. I was just thought that it was a big letdown from what from the standards that Marvel has set up. I thought it was a big letdown. It was too much of what would be expected, and when it's not to pull a line from their ill-advised new universe lineup from the 80s, we should expect the unexpected. See how many you people get that one. Anyway, but from next up on. From Marvel Phase 3, obviously I'm expecting the things just to get so huge and so bloated that it's going to be amazing. What I'm hoping though is because I am so intrigued by the next, and I want to see the people that I like in movies to continue to do good movies. Like I'm looking forward to future Captain America movies. I'm looking forward to Thor Ragnarok, but Also, I would hope that I'm so intrigued by the people that they are putting in the origin movies next. Doctor Strange, Black Panther,
Mhm.
The Inhumans, which I never thought I'd see, Miss Marvel, and I think some of that's going into Phase 4 perhaps. But
Yeah.
I'm so intrigued by that I would hope that they would look back and say, okay, now let's remember when we were first setting these movies up, how we had to kind of start from scratch and create these interesting worlds, and then we can kind of have a little bit of a,
Right.
intermingling with the series and stuff like that.
Right.
Like that was basically Agent Coulson's function before the Shield TV series.
Right.
I would like to see kind of more of that because honestly, those movies, even more than the Avengers, even more than Civil War, honestly, I'm more interested in what people are going to bring to that. To see, like, okay, are we going to see kind of more of this uniform thing, or are we going to see enough interesting originality in this where you think, no, this movie's really doing something, and yet it still plays into the whole MCU thing? That's what I
Right.
would like to see.
And Tony, what about you, sir? Your thought real quick with Ant-Man and what you're looking forward to with the next phase of Marvel films.
Well, I look forward to Civil War. Not much I could really say right now. Just I look forward to seeing the General from the Incredible Hulk back. I look forward to seeing how Ant-Man will be with the other Avengers and Civil War, and the overall story arc to it looks interesting. And there's also Black Panther, Spider-Man, Thor: Dark World. So there's not much I could say in that, but I am looking forward to what Marvel can bring in the future. And I did really like the first two Captain America movies. So as long as the third one could be pretty much like the first Avenger and the Winter Soldier for me, then I'm a happy camper. And as for Ant-Man, while it may not be my favorite Marvel movie, I still thought overall it was a good, awesome, fun time, good visual effects, pretty good casting. Paul Rudd nails it as Ant-Man, and Michael Pena and his crew. Obviously, they're the show stealers with, being the comic relief. So overall, I did have a really good time with Ant-Man. So yeah, I was really happy with this movie, and that's all I have to say.
Awesome. And for me, yes, the average moron film goer, as Glenn put it.
No, don't say.
No, for me, Ant-Man is probably one of my favorite Marvel films out of the MCU, and it's unfortunate that for whatever reason with the marketing, and now I'm not looking for spoilers, but just the way they handled the news and the marketing with Ant-Man just felt like they didn't think it could stand on its own, and I think there's enough in here that where it could stand on its own, where they could have promoted it a little bit better without having to add the Avengers to movie posters and having a news break that Ant-Man's going to be in Civil War, so you better go see Ant-Man type of feel to it, because this is a movie that's got heart. It's entertaining. It did feel like a comic book film, like a heist comic book film, though. Not your normal standard formula. And so I recommend it to people to go see it. I think there's something here for everyone to enjoy. And while I do have a little bit of problem with the whole interconnectivity of it, only because I like to see a film stand on its own a little more, especially for a beginning hero, than bringing in other heroes in order to help boost it. It is interesting, this beast that Marvel has created, and I love to see where it's going. I'm actually looking forward to Captain America: Civil War a lot because we're going to get our heroes not necessarily getting along with each other, which we've gotten a little bit in the Avengers. We got it in the first one quite a bit, which I liked, but. It's been a little bit lacking that everybody's kumbaya with each other a little bit more, and so I'll be interested to see how Marvel, who normally is a very happy, considered the colorful of the universes, is going to handle Civil War, is going to handle the Infinity War down the road, which is pretty dark if you look at the way the books go, especially if they follow the line where half the universe just disappears. So, it'll be interesting to see how they handle that. They're bringing Spider-Man in, which everybody's excited for, but I'm like, okay, it's great, and I understand the hype with Spider-Man, but with all the films that we've had with just Spider-Man alone that has come out, I'm more excited to see the other characters, Black Panther, Miss Marvel. It'll be fun seeing Ant-Man back, as you said, with the other ones in here. We're going to get War Machine back, which I'm going to look forward to because I just love Don Cheadle. I'm looking forward to Phase 3. I understand everything's going to even be more interconnected, and I can deal with that. Just give me a good movie. With any of these movies, that's just what I want. I want you to give me a movie that I can go in and feel like I got my money's worth. And even with Ultron's issues, that I felt like that, and I felt like that with just about every recent new Marvel film that's come out, that I've gotten my money's worth, and I think we all have, even if we've had some problems with it. No, they're not all going to be perfect, but they are entertaining, and it is impressive what Marvel has created. And now we have everybody else doing it. Whether or not that's going to pan out or not, we'll have to see. So we'll wrap it up here. I thank you for having such a lovely discussion, a very spicy discussion on Ant-Man. Let's go down the row real quick and pimp yourself. Meanwhile, in the Hall of Justice, Cole, tell us where we can find you at.
I am just a lonely soul on Facebook right now. You can find me at Cole Meredith or Shadows and Lovers Productions, which is where I am going to be promoting future movies, and Horror Roar, where I do all of my fan art. That's pretty sick and twisted, but it's a lot of fun. And if you have a sense of humor, let's have some fun. But thanks for having me, Mark. I love it when we all love a movie. Fuck you, Scott. No. No,
Applause finally come out.
Scott is my brother, and he knows. No, this was a lot of fun.
Elsewhere on the Isle of the Amazons next to Wonder Woman, we have Diva Dawn. Tell us where we can find you at.
I'm in the audience, somewhere in the audience, or at intheaudience.net.
Fantastic. And there out in the wasteland, we have BFD. Go, Mr. Glenn Bittner.
I'm sorry to understand. I don't speak average moron. I'm kidding, man. I'm kidding, man.
I love it.
I probably respect you more than anyone else in this room, Mark.
No, I love it. That's okay, Glenn. Tell me where you can find you at.
You can find me on the YouTube's B-Movie Bunker, Naked Hobo Productions, and on Facebook, B-Movie Bunker, Naked Hobo Productions, and follow me on Twitter at Naked Hobo.
Fantastic. And in the sky, in the big invisible jet, we have the Bowtie Man himself, Paul. Go.
Yes, when I'm not trying to get on the island of Amazons.
That's why you have the invisible jet.
Yes, I stole it. I am on Facebook, Twitter, and WordPress at Forsaken Film Reviews.
Then below the ocean, we have in the city of the Lost Atlantis, the one and only Movieocrity himself, Scott.
I'm Aquaman. Actually, I'm a big fan of Aquaman. I think he gets a bum rap, so I'm totally cool with that. All right, yeah, you can find me at movieocrity.com. I've been kind of lax about writing stuff, but I really have a ton of stuff to do, lots more stuff to write, lots of episodes of my own show to produce, and plus all the nice podcasts like the Spoiler Room here that people are nice enough to have me on. So you can catch that all on movieocrity.com and catch my web series Movieocrity at vimeo.com/channels/movieocrity.
And finally, deep in the heart of the jungle, we have the Tiger Power himself, Tiger Dude, Tony Estrada. Go.
Well, thank you very much, Mark. If you want to find me on my YouTube channel, just go to www.youtube.com/22TigerDude, where you could see all of my fabulous movie reviews, sponsor reviews, movie news, and many, many more. You can go to my pictures at 22TigerDude and my Instagram, my Twitter page at twitter.com/TigerDude22, moviepilot.com/TigerDude22, and you could like my Facebook page at facebook.com/22TigerDude Tiger Power. Thank you very much, Mark, for bringing me here.
That's 1, 2, 3 different, 3 riffs, 3 websites.
And finally, as always, folks, as you've listened plenty of times, but you can go to specialmarkproductions.com where you can find links to every one of these wonderful people who have chose to discuss Ant-Man tonight, and you can find my stuff there as well in specialmarkproductions.com. You'll also find episodes of The Spoiler Room and my playlist for the stuff I do for We Live Film. We also now are on moviepilot.com, so you can find us there. Started posting episodes there if you don't want to go to Special Mark Productions. Some great stuff out there. We got 25th anniversary episode coming up soon. Make sure you stay tuned to that. So we're going to be Steven Seagal in it with Marked for Death and Hard to Kill. So look for that for our next episode on the Spoiler Room. Hope you've enjoyed this Ant-Man chat. Please go out and support Ant-Man because it is a lot of fun. You will get your money's worth, and I think you'll just have a good time at the theater with you and the entire family. So everyone here at the Spoiler Room, we'd like to thank you for listening, because remember, in the Spoiler Room, the conversation is fresh, but we do definitely spoil the movies.